Hey gang, and welcome to another episode of Try Not to Curse. This is one I have been manifesting for quite some time. You know, I mentioned her in season 1 when we sat down and had that wonderful conversation with Tammy. I am joined by Ellie, my former 6th grade English teacher. We're going to get into education, and y'all know the education system right now. Oh my God. We're going to get into all of that, but we're also going to talk about what it's like to be the front woman for a popular band. We've got all kinds of things to talk about. So Ellie, thank you so much for joining me. This is wild.
I can't believe I'm here and my hands are sweaty.
You're so fun. So, okay. So not to get right into it, but you were my teacher when I was 12 going on 13. I'm 40 years old now. How long were you teaching full time?
Before, like, when did I start
Yeah,
and all that?
yeah.
Okay, so I graduated from college in 87.
Okay.
And I was blessed to get hired in New Milford in 87.
Oh, wow.
And it was really, and I was teaching elementary school, and it was really hard to get hired that, you know, in that time period for elementary teachers. It was like a wicked popular job.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But I was working at Elliott Pratt, and that morning, a woman came in with her girl, and her daughter was incredibly shy, and I loved kids, and I went right over to her and I said, "We're gonna have such a great day, let's go join this game." And so when I had my interview that afternoon, and when I got to my interview, this woman is interviewing me, and she goes, "Do you work at Elliott Pratt?" And I said, "I do." And she goes, You helped my daughter this morning."
Oh, no
And I was
kidding.
like, "Score, baby."
That happens in
Score,
movies.
baby.
That happens in movies.
It was incredible. So
that's cool.
She ended up having and it was the end of August. I mean, I was just sweating it out. Like, am I going to get a job?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? And I
Right.
didn't want to substitute.
Sure.
Because I think my strength is bonding with kids, and my strength is making curriculum as fun as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so I was like, subbing doesn't let you do that.
Well, and it's hit or miss too. You don't know if you're going to work every day or not.
Right.
That's
right.
got to be stressful. For
So
sure.
it was almost like this countdown happening. Like, if you don't get hired by September, by end of August, like, you're out.
Yeah.
And then it was like a whole year of like, what am I going to do with my life now? So I got hired, and I taught 1st grade at Northville.
Wild.
Yeah. And then the next year I got married. We're not married anymore.
Right.
This was, my first husband. And I moved to Florida because he was in the Navy.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I went to Northville as well, and our paths did not cross.
No, I did not know you at Northville.
Yeah.
But then I came back, and I got hired back, which was like really miraculous to me. And then I taught 2nd grade at Hill and Plain.
Okay.
I taught 1st grade at Hill and Plain.
Okay.
And I taught 6 years in elementary, and then I saw the opening for middle school. And the elementary teachers were so funny, because when I was leaving to go to middle school, they thought I was insane.
Oh, that's, yeah.
And they actually gave me a present with like deodorant and mouthwash. And I'm like, are you guys trying to tell me I smell
That's fair.
bad?
No, it's
and
for your kids. It's
they,
for your students.
No, they were like, it's for you, but if you smell bad, they're going to tell you.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, come on.
See, I thought the opposite, because those are the smelly years. The middle school
They
is
really
the smelly
are.
years.
Like, it's like
That's wild.
bad chicken soup coming, or
Oh,
onion soup
yes.
coming down the hall. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But I loved middle school. Honestly, I look back on middle school as my favorite years
That's great.
teaching.
Yeah.
And I was at Scotticoke for 4 years.
Okay.
And my mentality was, well, if I love middle school this much, I'll love high school even more.
And did we feel that way?
No.
When we got there?
We really didn't.
Because I always said I had no desire to teach whatsoever. If I ever were, I would want to teach high school or college, because there at least I can kind of speak to you on more of an adult level.
Yeah.
And like listen, kid, let's be real. You know what I mean? Whereas you have to not sugarcoat, but you have to approach things a little more positively with an elementary school student, and then the middle school students, because they're going through puberty and it's like everything's the end of the world.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah. So for me, I had always said if I were to ever teach, it would have to be high school minimum. But I would probably prefer college, because it's like, I can curse in front of you and you're not going to run to your parents, that kind of thing. But
I teach college now.
yeah, see?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will tell you, the thing about elementary school is they take you completely out of yourself. And probably the hallway action appealed to me because of the fact that I'm like a frustrated star wannabe. You'd walk down the hall and it was like, I was Miss James then.
Yep.
Mrs. James!
Yep.
Mrs. James! And I'm
Yep.
like, my people.
Yep.
My people. Like, it's just...
Again, you were my favorite teacher. And I've said this on the show in the past, you saw me. You saw me, and then through you, I saw me. You know what I mean? And it was like, because I didn't have anyone that ever really built me up before or made me feel like what I had to say was relevant and important. All of my teachers previously, it was just hand in your worksheet, your assignment. We have a quiz. It was never, and it's a testament to you as a teacher, because at that time in middle school, you weren't our only teacher, right? We had 7 different periods, and we were going from social studies to math to health to all this. We even had home ec back then. So you're seeing hundreds of kids in a day, and it's always going to be different. And for me, this one person throughout your day to feel like I had your full attention, and you made me feel like you gave a crap about what mattered to me and the things that I was doing and things that were going on. And it was like, oh, I am cool. Mrs. the coolest teacher in yellow thinks that I'm cool, so I must be cool because she's cool. You know what I mean? And from there, it kind of snowballed. But truly, I absolutely credit it to you. Of all the teachers that I've had,
giving me way credit.
I mean, but for real, I mean, and granted, there have been other teachers later on, like Mrs. G and then Mr. Cannon in the high school, and I've brought them up in the past as well. But we all have that one teacher that stood out for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And for me, it's you. So that's why I wanted to have you on here, because you've got that special something, and you've always been a positive force. Every time I see you, you're happy and you're positive, and you're what's going on, give me the latest, and I think that's just so important. Again, I had you 12 going into 13. I'm 40 years old now. And I will always remember you, and I always will feel that way about you, and that's amazing. That's amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah. And I hope other people feel that way too about you. I'm sure they do. I mean, I know I have people, if I bring up your name, oh yeah, I remember her, and oh yeah, So I remember there was we had one of those spirit weeks, whatever, and I dressed up as you. But I had like this top that had like a really like deep V, so I had to put like a turtleneck on under it. So everybody thought that I was this other teacher, and I was like so annoyed. I was like, no, I just can't. I can't wear it was too revealing. But because it was like a flowy thing, and it was like it was kind of like rock starry kind of thing, and yeah. But well, I think it's awesome. So. So how was high school? So you get to high school, and what happened?
Well, I got to the old high school, and
Okay.
I was in the old high school for not very long, because I did a year of it, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, the students, when they're in high school, they don't care about you anymore.
Yeah, no.
And you're kind of annoying to them.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, I have my job, I've got my, significant other,
Yeah.
and you're just,
Yeah.
what are you giving me this homework
you're
for?
like my next parent. Like I got
Like,
the parents
you're
breathing down my
annoying.
neck. Now I got you.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like, I felt like I had no connection like I'd had in the past with my students.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they would do things like they'd fall asleep on the desk, which I didn't expect. I thought
Yeah.
they'd be riveted.
I definitely did that. Yeah.
I was like, they're not riveted?
No.
I still remember the funniest thing that happened was they were not, I didn't have I had American Studies, and I did not have particularly a group that loved to read.
Sure.
So what did we start with? The Scarlet Letter.
Okay.
Right? Because
Scandalous.
it's the Puritan.
Right.
But no, they hated it. They hated it.
sure.
They're like, this makes no sense. So I read the entire book out loud.
Oh.
The entire book.
Yeah.
And when I read it out loud, they liked it because it's such a good story.
Right.
And their listening comprehension so much better
Yeah.
than their reading on their own comprehension.
Sure.
So then I went to the book room, because back then, literally the department chair just took me in and was like, freshman book, sophomore, junior, senior, and just let me do whatever I wanted with the books. There was
Okay.
no real
Yeah.
set curriculum
Yeah.
or anything like that. It was just really loose.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to get something that's going to grab them. So I got the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Ooh, girl. Okay.
And let me tell you, I had a student come in, and back then they weren't using the internet. It was like
Yeah.
before those days.
Right.
And this young man goes, so what's the story with him and the hookers? And he starts asking these, and the kids
Yeah.
are like, what? There's hookers in the book? Everyone starts reading.
Okay.
And they're like, it changed the whole class.
Yeah. Yeah.
It got really good.
Yeah. But meanwhile, now all of these books they're trying to ban, and we'll get into all of it. We'll get into all of it. So I should ask, from when you started in the late 80s to now, and you said now you're teaching college, how much has changed in the education system? I mean, and we can go in all different directions, but I mean, of course, yes, with the advent of the internet and now social media, and everyone's on their phones and everyone has a device. And I mean, I know we can go in many different directions, but what was like the biggest thing for you that you were like, oh, this is different?
Okay, so I have to say the biggest thing for me is that I remember when I was teaching elementary school in New Milford, and the parents would come in and they were so incredibly supportive and so almost deferential to me as the teacher, even when I was only like 22 and I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like they were just very respectful towards me, and very much like, I had one say to me in one of our conferences, listen, I know you're not supposed to hit him, but honestly, if he gets out of line, I don't mind if you do. And I was like, oh no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. Like I would
Right.
I'd never
Like,
do that. But they were like, they gave me that kind of authority. And my last year teaching, you're going to be shocked when you hear this. So
I don't know that I will.
I was at Newtown.
Yeah.
I had a student in AP Lang, junior year. Now at this point, we've got open grade books. We've got Google Classroom. They're working on a research paper of their choice. And this student, there's multiple like records of me getting in touch with her.
Sure.
Trying to make sure she's on top of things, make sure you've shared your draft. I'm helping you. We have our conference, blah, blah, blah. It's all recorded.
Sure.
Plus, the grade book's open.
Right.
Her parents can go in and see she missed the conference. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when it got to the end of the year, I was retiring. I got invited to a meeting, and then suddenly the meeting went off my calendar. Now, at this point, we're in the teacher work days, and school's over, and the kids are gone. Like,
Sure.
finals are over.
Okay.
Her parents got upset about that paper, and they actually reopened my grade book. They initially invited me to the meeting, and then they must have thought better of it, and they took me off the meeting.
Right.
So they had the head of the English department and the parents and the principal, and they reopened my grade book and took assignments from this student to change my grades.
Wow. And what did they figured because you're retiring, you won't care, you won't notice, it doesn't make a difference in your world?
If I'd been like coming back the following year, I think I would have been at the meeting.
Sure.
But the only reason I even knew was because I ran into the principal in the bathroom and I was like, hey, I had the meeting, then I didn't have the meeting.
Right.
Did you have a meeting? What happened at this meeting?
Yeah.
And that's when she said, well, the parents were upset that she didn't, she had like probably a B instead of an A. And
Okay.
she's like, so we opened it back up.
Yeah.
And we're going to take some things that she had zeros on. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
But a zero is a zero. That's the whole point of grades. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of
There's no
handing in assignments and being on time, and that's the point. Is we're supposed to be preparing these kids for the future. When you go to a future job and you're expected to have something in at a certain deadline, you can't have mommy and daddy call up and say, well, actually,
Yeah.
like just this one time, or I mean, this is what so. So again, we're going to go down this rabbit hole, gang, and we all know, I've talked about this in the past as well. We've talked about it again with Tammy. So here's what kills me. And COVID, it was never more prevalent than during COVID, right? So COVID, all of the parents' attitudes were, I can't have these kids in the house. I have stuff to do. I have my own life. I can't work from home. So the parents treated the school system as babysitters, quite frankly. And they were listen, I just can't keep these kids home all day for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. You need to take them off my hands. That's how it was. But at the same time, the moment you start talking about curriculum and what you're teaching the students, all of a sudden things got icky and things got political and things got, how dare you? It's not your right to teach this to my children. How dare you try to get them to express themselves or view the world differently? And especially with this whole CTE bull and everything like that. How dare you try to, not CTE, for what was it called?
CT critical CRT.
CRT.
Race
Thank
theory?
you, CRT. Yeah. How dare you try to get them? You're making my child feel bad for things in the past that had happened that have nothing to do with us. So, well, which one is it? Am I babysitting your kid to get them out of your hair? Or am I educating them just the same way you were educated? I'm giving them the same information you got, because heaven forbid we add anything to the curriculum that even opens us further into the rest of the world. We'll go down that road too. But it's just so wild to me that on the one hand, my children are a burden. I can't deal with them. But on the other hand, oh, how dare you? How dare you teach them something that is uncomfortable? Or I don't understand what it is the modern parent is looking for these days. Because for me, I'm thinking I would want the best education possible for my student. And to me, that would include as much knowledge as possible, very different ways of thinking, different ways of looking at the world, different perspectives, a little culture, perhaps, heaven forbid. So it's just wild to me. And so how did you experience any of that? Because like you said, like you've been retired for a little while and now you're teaching college, so it's a little different there.
Well, I can give a couple things.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I had you in sixth grade, and I used to use this writing workshop method. So everybody had their own, and I used it in elementary school. That's where I was trained. They had it in the school system in New Milford, and I thought it was so impressive.
Yeah.
Because it gave the kids their own voice. So you would provide all the writing materials. Every kid had their own folder, and they wrote their stories from their heart. And I got so many amazing things. And it was, again, like you said, a child finding their own voice.
Right.
And it was a gift.
Yeah.
And we used to write silently. Then we'd look at model authors. Then people would share their work. And I used that in literally from when I taught kindergarten too, from kindergarten all the way till high school.
Yeah.
And we would do poetry units through it.
Yep.
And even when I had English classes that didn't necessarily lend themselves to it, I would make sure I had that unit.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was that important.
Yeah. I wrote hella poetry in that class.
Yeah.
I did.
For writers.
Yeah. And I know we read The Outsiders. I know that for sure.
I love doing that book.
I can't remember. I think I read Bridge to Terabithia in that
Bridge.
class.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite books growing
Such
up.
a beautiful book. I never read that one.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ones I pulled out of the bookshelf, and I'm like, oh, this is such a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those I absolutely remember from that class. And now we're also into, and I feel like people who enjoy reading are always going to read. They're just always going to read. But it's getting harder again with social media, with devices. Everybody has a 30-second time span. I even talk about it when going to the movies. I've said this ad nauseum. I said I do not watch movies at home. Because I'm at home, I have stuff to do. I don't have 2 hours, 2.5 hours
you'll
to sit
pick up
down.
your phone.
Yeah, I got to
too.
change the laundry out, or I have to go, do something with the cats, or change my sheets. Whatever. So I have maybe a half hour to an hour that I'll sit down and dedicate something. And like you said, even then I'll be picking up my phone, multitasking.
I do
what have you.
too.
Right. So how do we get people interested in reading? And also, have we changed any of the curriculum over time? So like the standards, The Diary of Anne Frank, Catcher in the Rye, The Outsiders, The Giver. I hated Catcher in the Rye, by the way. Were there any books? And I still, to this day, I don't understand why it was important or necessary to this day. But over the years, has there been any book that you're like, fuck, this is one we got to read. I got to teach this one again. Like, did anyone force anything on you like that?
There were usually enough choices that I was able to weed out what I didn't want to do.
Okay, fair.
I remember as a freshman getting to high school and getting hit with the Iliad, which was like reading the Bible because of all these names and stuff. It was like, can't even... Yeah. And then the Odyssey. We did them both in their entirety.
Yep.
And as soon as I saw nobody does the Iliad anymore. But when I saw the Odyssey, I was like, I don't think I can do this. So I kind of did an abridged version.
But see, that's kind of one of those like the Malcolm X thing. That's kind of one of those like, hey gang, he sleeps with his mom. Here's the book.
Oh no, that's Oedipus.
Oedipus.
Yeah, that's Oedipus.
Yes, but that's one of those that like that's probably how I would approach it. I'd be like, just so you know, he sleeps with his mom in this one.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
that's so
that'll
funny
get him reading
because it's true.
Yeah,
I remember one day coming in when we were reading Oedipus, and one of the kids had been absent, and I'm like, we had a really big conversation yesterday about like what's going down.
Yeah,
and this kid got up and he goes, I can explain it. And he did this whole thing pictorially on the board about like, and he has Oedipus get in a car and like drive out of town, and then how he comes back and solves the riddle. It was hilarious.
That's wild.
It was hilarious.
Yeah. But Odyssey and the Iliad, okay.
Yeah, those were like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I worked with this brilliant teacher named Lee Keelock in Newtown, and I remember him saying to me, the brains are changing because of what we're doing here. He goes, and students, there was an article he had from the National Council of English Teachers that said students are not going to be able to attend to some of the texts that they've been able to attend to in the past. And I hate to say it, but I absolutely saw it happen.
No, 100%.
Case in point, Chucky D. Charles Dickens. Love him.
Yeah.
And Great Expectations. When I started teaching,
oh God,
I love anything by him. But I have to, that's not my favorite of his, but that was in the freshman curriculum when I started teaching in Woodbury. I taught all over the place. And the kids loved it.
Yeah.
Because the plot is so good, and the coincidence of the plot and the way it all interconnects. And I used to have them make these mobiles where they would have to connect the characters, and we'd have these cool projects from it. And it was super fun.
Yeah.
They loved it. And by the time I got to my last honors freshman class in Newtown, I had to shorten the book. I had to like, okay, so chapters 32 through 38, here's what happens. Yeah. And now we're going to pick up with 38. Because like if they couldn't attend to it. Yeah. And even following the intricate sentence structures with all the semicolons and commas, they'd be like, they'd lose the thread. Yeah. They couldn't follow it.
Well, and
it made me sad.
No, but it's true that like our grammar is so different now. The way we form sentences, the way we form speech, the way we text, for goodness sakes, has changed that by so much. So I mean, for me, not that well, it might be. I've never been diagnosed, but I've always had like a processing disorder. Like I feel really under pressure when somebody like asks me a question about something, or maybe I don't have it, like, and I feel this like I get like anxiety, like I need to give you an immediate answer. I still have this problem at work to this day too. Like somebody will send me an email and it's like I have to respond right away. When it's like, no, you can give it some, you know what I mean? So
awareness of that is so important.
Well, but of course that didn't come till much later on in life. But
that didn't even come to me till I was 40.
Yeah, I'm saying.
So I'm impressed you got it now.
I'm saying. So, well, you know why? Honestly, it was the stupid Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish movie like 5 years ago or something like that, where he went I think it was called Back to School or something. And Kevin Hart's character had the same thing where he just panics. And I was like, oh shit, yeah. That's what I've got.
Me.
That's me. That's what I've got. That's what I've always had.
I got it from Oprah.
See? Okay.
Oprah had a show about it, and she's like, just because somebody asks you to do something, you don't have to jump with a yes to be a people pleaser. Right. She's like, take a minute and just say, I'm going to think about this.
Right. Exactly.
And man, did that ever change my life.
Right. But I wish I had that in school rather than just like, I'm just not going to do this assignment instead because I'm overwhelmed. And you can't vocalize it then. You're not emotionally mature enough then either. But so like for me, Shakespeare was like the most stressful thing on earth. Yep. I felt like such an idiot. I have no idea what anyone is saying. Yep. I can't keep the character straight. I can't keep the situation straight.
Especially Hamlet.
Yes.
It's like, what the?
Well, and I also feel like as much as Shakespeare is applauded and held on to the highest standard, for me, when I read, I don't need every piece of detail. I don't need to know that we're sitting in a room that has Venetian blinds on the window. We're in front of a desk that has X, Y, and Z on it. And I don't need, so that for me, it gets distracting. And then I lose what the hell was the whole purpose anyway. So Shakespeare's always been really tough for me. Like Romeo and Juliet, because everybody knows it. Midsummer Night's Dream is probably my favorite of all. It's
love
probably
that
my
one.
favorite of all. But yeah, like Othello, Hamlet, Macbeth, the one we're not supposed to say. But like those, like I'm like, all right, can you just tell me what happened? Just tell me what happened. Just summarize. Or is there a film? Let's watch the film. What are we doing here? Because it was overwhelming.
So you have to imagine when I had Shakespeare in the early 80s, when I was in high school, and again in college, there were no movies in the room.
right. Like, or
so-
you would go to a play maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Okay.
I just remember being like so lost. And then because Willie goes off on his own like extended metaphors and things, you're right. You totally lose it.
Yeah.
I was so nervous to teach it that I would like, what do they call it? Cliff note.
Yeah,
I would
sure.
Cliff note
Yeah.
and spark note the hell out of it.
Yes.
So my copy had all these marks like, if a kid asks me what the massive wheel means,
Right.
I will be able to say exactly what that is.
Yeah.
You know, so I had all these notes to the point where one of the principals once surprise observed me, and she was like, it was almost too much information. And I was like, I know!
Yeah,
because
that's
I'm
the
so,
problem,
I have
right.
like a total inferiority complex about this.
Right.
And I'm so scared that I won't be able to answer their question.
Well, and you don't have that kind of time either. You're just not given that kind of time to really break down these, what are lauded as classics. So I feel like unless you're in theater, unless you're pursuing something like that, we're not, as a society, we're not there anymore.
Yeah.
We're not, you know what I mean?
No, we're not.
And we're never going to have that appreciation anymore until Denzel does it on the big screen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, it's really, so I don't know, is it a good thing that we're changing with the times? I mean, over history they do. That's how it works. But my question is, what are we replacing that with now? You know what I'm saying? Like what?
Honestly, most English teachers were still responsible to teach Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you just have to find really
How
fun
to connect.
ways to do it.
Yeah.
And so I used to, like it's pretty easy to do fun stuff with it.
Yeah.
I used to have the kids have to memorize lines, and they'd have to do scenes, and I would let them do the scenes, like set them any place in the building that you want.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Give it any kind of modern setting if you want. Do your costumes. Do your sword fights.
Yeah.
I mean, they had fun with it.
That's
They
cool.
really had fun with it.
Has there been any new books added? Like, because again, I'm thinking of just the ones we all know, but have there been any new classics that have been, it's such a weird.
The teachers work really hard on that. Like, we try to see, like, what can we add? Like, I know at the middle school they added Holes.
Okay,
that's like a newer text.
That's my sister's class, probably, I think was Holes, yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to think at the high school what we've added that's new.
And I'm just thinking, what could you possibly add? Like, are we adding Harry Potter?
No.
Are we adding? We're not even, because we never even did like Lord of the Rings. So it's one of those like.
I know, and we could do Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And people would dig Lord of the Rings.
100%.
I think that there was The Hobbit in the book room, and I don't think anybody ever taught it.
Yeah.
Speak.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Lord
I've heard
House
that
Anderson.
title. Yep.
That was like, ooh, but
Yeah.
that's like 90s.
Yeah.
You know?
So this is what I'm saying. It's very interesting to me that we're still holding on to, like, I'm wondering when that change will occur, how much further down the line until they say, okay, Shakespeare's not either not relevant or nobody's connecting with it. Or
there's definitely been effort, I mean, in the part of education to bring in more women voices, more people of color voices.
Yeah.
So that's been important.
So I'm trying to go through it. Now I'm thinking, okay, Death of a Salesman we read.
Yep.
I'm trying to go through the couple of things there.
I was the only teacher at Newtown that did Death of a Salesman.
Really?
Nobody did it anymore.
Oh, that's interesting.
They did Crucible.
Yeah, friggin' Crucible. Yeah.
I was like, Crucible,
Yeah.
I didn't really want to do that one.
Yeah. It's annoying.
Unless we're going to go to Salem.
Right.
Unless there's a field trip involved.
Hey.
You know?
Why not? I love it.
But I will say, like, when we're talking about changes, I have friends that are still in education that I actually taught with at Schaghticoke. I'm not going to say their names.
That's okay.
But I loved them and stayed, lifelong friends.
Yeah.
One of them told me that where she is teaching now, they have taken the science curriculum and they have made it lockstep across all the teachers.
Okay.
Every PowerPoint is made, and she's like, okay, on the one side, I don't have to plan.
Right.
But on the flip side, all of the fun, creative, engaging things that I always did with them.
Yeah.
Because she's incredibly creative.
Yeah.
There's no time for that. She said, but I'm still doing my thing in spots.
Trying to make it fun, yeah.
I'm still behind the other teachers because I'm injecting.
Yeah.
They still love my class.
Yeah.
But this lockstep,
Yeah.
that's not a cool way.
Yeah. See, I always struggled with that too, because on the one hand, I feel like it's good if we're all learning the exact same thing.
Right.
And we're all at the same level. Because I remember, I have an ex that went to Newtown, and he would tell me the stuff that they would learn in the different classes that they had. And I was like, wow, we weren't offered things like that. And, sometimes you just feel like certain people have a leg up, and you're like, but we were at the same level. It was both public schools. And why is it that
Connecticut.
Right. Why is it that you got this and I didn't, and things like that? But I understand what you're saying too, is especially because everybody learns differently too. We all retain information. We all communicate differently. So in order for a teacher to be engaging, sometimes they have to go off script. They have to, pivot and do something differently to engage those students that are not responsive to just the cookie cutter lessons.
Yep. Or if you know that you have a couple students that love horror, you know what I mean? It's like, I can bring in some Edgar Allan Poe here.
Yeah.
Like you, as a teacher,
I remember
you want
that
to be
too.
able to bring stuff in that's going to be cool for them. That's going to hook them a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So has life gotten easier with involving the internet and Google Docs and shared business and stupid? I think it's all the worst personally, but
I do too.
Thank you. Okay.
There's another teacher I worked with at New Milford High School who I saw over the summer, and I won't say his name, but he's an awesome teacher. Awesome teacher. And he said to me, people ask me what's changed the most. He goes, and I will say, it's the phones. And it's true. It's
I see it at my own job. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You used to come into a classroom before the bell time when everybody's like, hey,
you're social,
and they're like all social and talking.
Yeah.
And I walk in now and it's like they're all just in their own little world. And then you have to beg them to put them away. And it's like, man.
Yeah. But a lot of schools have finally said that's it, no more.
But I'm at university now and that's not happening.
Well, it cracked me up because I remember growing up, like pagers was a big thing. And that same thing, they would take your pager from you. You couldn't have chewing gum at the most, for goodness sakes. Like
you couldn't wear a baseball hat,
right? Yeah. Or the skinny spaghetti straps, what have you. And now I'm like, wait a minute, why is this suddenly acceptable to have the phone out at all times?
I know.
Even if we wanted to use it like as a calculator or something when we first got the phones, no, absolutely not. We have you have to get the T190s or whatever the stupid things were. I just don't understand why all of a sudden. Well, that's not true. I understand. It's the parents. The parents are the problem because little Timmy, I have to text little Timmy because I'm picking him up for the dentist, or he forgot his textbook. So stop it. Stop. Do you remember? Listen, when I was in middle school and my poor mother, I was calling her from the house phone every 10 damn minutes once I got off the bus, and she was ready to blow her brains out. And do not tell me you are texting your child all day long. That is bull crap. Absolutely.
I didn't know what to do the first time a kid was like, it's my mom.
Yeah.
And I got to take this.
Yeah.
I was like,
I would see, to me, this is why I can't be a teacher, because I'd be like, isn't your mom working? Doesn't she have shit to do just like you at this very moment? That's what I would say. Tell her what time you're taking lunch, and then the two of you have a nice little chat for 30 minutes in the cafeteria.
It was funny because when the phone thing first started to become a thing, I remember our principal at Newtown was like, we're having a policy where the kids can absolutely use their phones. And what I suggest everyone do is figure it out and get to incorporate technology in your room.
That's helpful.
So use like those little Quizlet things where they're going to be like taking quizzes on their phones and this and that. And then the younger teachers that were much more savvy, they would get up in like faculty meetings and be like, here's a really cute thing you could, I keep hitting this mic.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Here's a really cute thing you can do with them, with their phones. And I was like, I really don't want them using their phones.
But also get bent. Like that's not what we were taught. That's not how we didn't get certified in education so we could pull up an app.
Yeah. And here's the thing that happens.
No.
So like I'm teaching women's studies and we're going to look at, this is at Newtown, and we're going to look at 6 Sylvia Plath poems. So what I would do, fun, engage, put the kids into groups, be like, you're getting a Sylvia Plath poem. Read it together as a group. Talk together as a group. Hash it out. If you don't know a word, look it up. Find ways to read it. Read through the lines. Try to make meaning of it. And I'd give them some really cool ones like daddy and metaphors and you know what I mean? And like see if you can figure it out. Then I'd be like, okay, then find a cool way to read it for the class. Choral read sections if you want. Do it. Interpretive dance.
Yeah.
Find a way to make it really fun for us.
Yeah.
And then tell us what you think it means. Talk to us about it and open it up for conversation, right? You do that now, someone's got their phone out and they're just looking it up and they're bored.
Right.
And they're like, okay, it means blah. And they just give you some canned response. And it's like, no one's thinking here. And it's just so sad.
Yeah.
To me, it got really sad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that most schools are finally taking a stand. And again, I know because again now we're also in the culture of school shootings. So that's a whole, and we have that controversy at my workplace as well. For example, again, I don't talk about where I work, but I do work in the manufacturing field. So back when that Yankee Candle manufacturing had the tornado or what have you, where the whole building collapsed, there was the argument of, well, the only way they knew where half of the staff were buried was because they had their cell phone and they could reach out and touch. So I understand the argument to a point, but at the end of the day, you're there for a reason. And the students are there to learn something.
Yeah.
Not to be on their phone, not to make a TikTok, not to like, not to subscribe. They're there. Well, please subscribe to this podcast, of course. They're there to figure out where their place is in this world and find an interest so that maybe hopefully they can go to college, or if they choose to just go into the workforce, they find shit that interests them, what have you. So it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. And again, because I have the same problem at my job as well.
And
with
you know
people with
what?
the
If you're going to
phones.
make that argument, you could make the leave it in your locker.
Right.
Bring it to school, leave it in your
Right.
locker.
Or in the basket on the teacher's desk or what have you.
We don't
Right.
like that though.
Yeah, well,
it's annoying.
Turn the damn notifications off, people,
Right.
for goodness sakes.
Because we had those, do you know what teachers use is those giant shoe things,
Oh,
those
yeah,
plastic,
yeah,
and
yep,
everybody
yep,
would like
the
tuck
pockets,
their phone in.
yeah.
And that, that's okay.
I would
But
say, listen, silence it, turn it backwards so you can't see it illuminate. I would, all that crap.
I would actually rather
turn it
they
off.
didn't even have it. Like,
Oh, sure.
I went through Sandy Hook
Right.
and I was at Newtown High School.
Right.
So when I had just taught Death of a Salesman, we were acting it out in the lecture hall.
Yeah.
When the announcement came on and I had a prep period.
Mm-hmm.
The announcement came on and our assistant principal said, this is not a drill. So I'm at my desk and everybody chose to go to my desk, all the other teachers. And we're like, it's got to be here at the high school because that's where shooters go.
And it makes sense, yeah.
And so we were just waiting for it. And then we heard people running down the halls with walkie-talkies.
Wow.
Then we heard all the phones going off in the office.
Sure,
So
sure.
all the teachers that had their phones, and we were like, something is totally going on.
Yeah.
Now, the rule is no phones during a lockdown.
Right.
But we were in a lockdown for like 3 hours.
You were, right,
So eventually, even teachers that had kids in their rooms let them take out their phones.
Yeah.
Which was not a great move because, for example, my friend Kim, who was a physics teacher, she's like, the kids started taking their phones out and she goes, we were all getting like, what is going on? We could hear
Yeah.
helicopters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
was frightening.
Yeah.
So people were trying to communicate with the outside world. And
Yeah.
she said, when we saw it was Sandy Hook, she goes, I had 2 kids in my class whose parents were in the building.
Sure.
So they're breaking
Or who had
down.
siblings, yeah.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
It was horrible.
See, again, I'm torn on that because my thing would be, I'm thinking of my mom. So I would think, okay, you can have the phone, turn off all alarms, all notifications, totally deadly silent. Turn it off because we don't know if it's us or not. But have it so you can say to your parents, yes, I'm okay, give them updates, what have you.
They changed the policy after Sandy Hook.
I can understand how then you getting the update and it not being you, now your mind is racing because now you just want to get to where that is. For me, I was a sophomore in high school when Columbine happened. And granted, I do know that there were one or two small events that had happened prior to Columbine, but Columbine was the big news story.
And that was my first year at New Milford High School.
Yeah,
So
right.
I didn't have you.
Right.
Bummer.
I know. But I said Heidi in the hall.
You did.
So that's I've had that memory since, sophomore year, I was 14, 15. And then since then we had 9/11 happen
right
when I was a senior.
My God.
We've had
it was that close together.
Yeah. 9/11 happened. You're right. Yeah, it was I think the fall of my senior year. It was the fall of my senior year. And I still remember that day vividly as well. But it was the same thing. We didn't have cell phones then. One of my fellow students, she was a year younger than me. Her parents were in the city that day. That was on their list of things to do, was to go to the World Trade. And she was losing her mind, understandably, because she couldn't get a hold of them. She didn't have a phone. Thankfully, they actually called the school and said, "We're good. We didn't go there yet. We're not there."
Oh my God.
So, but again, so I can see the argument on both sides. Again, even at my own job, we had an incident, and unfortunately, social media made our manager aware of what had happened before he had been told by one of the members of staff, because everybody was on their phone. So, I can see it from both sides.
Yeah.
Now, again, with now this new culture, and you guys, we could go on, and I will at some, I will, but for some reason as a culture, we would rather just train our students how to deal with a school shooting than actually try to prevent them from happening. For you, when Columbine first happened, we didn't do any shooter drills by the time I was out of public school.
Nope.
We didn't even do it in college. It's weird we do it now at my job, which is that's so bizarre to me. But this is the world we live in. When they started doing that and saying, okay, we're going to have, you're going to crouch down in a corner the farthest away from the door. You're going to shut all the windows, block all this. When you thought that, at that point, were you like, I don't know that I want to do this anymore? I mean, what was that? What was your initial feeling about that?
Well, when we had to go back after Sandy Hook, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I stayed doing it. And then I felt when we had these drills, this series of drills that literally was like a little notebook. And it was like, okay, active shooter in the building drill, threat outside the building drill.
Wow.
There was like all these different levels
scenarios.
and scenarios, and it got like real thorough. But we also had some really horrible meetings. We had one with our security guy who was basically like, listen, even if they want to get through the cement walls, they'll get through the cement walls.
Absolutely.
And because people were freaking.
Yeah.
Dealing with a population of kids who had been so damaged and so scared.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Well, they didn't really start the drills until after Sandy Hook, right? Like for some reason even though again, we had them
yeah.
between from Columbine to Sandy Hook, that was 10, 15 years. But for some reason, that's not for some reason. It's because of the age of the students, because they were so young. Then all of a sudden the country was like, okay, we have to do something.
Right.
But the answer was do drills and just terrify our kids more. I mean, my mother vividly remembers having drills from the war. They would
like
nuclear bomb. Yeah.
So does my
going
husband.
Going under the desk and
the duck and cover.
Yeah.
In the hallways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, if they're going to get in, they're going to get in if they're motivated enough. So What more can we do? And I mean, again, you're not a politician. You're not making any laws here. But from a teacher's perspective, seeing all these different students come through your door, what can we do aside from the drills? What changes can be made? I mean, for me, I think the step in the right direction is now we're prosecuting parents for, being neglectful and that kind of thing. But I mean, we even just one of the most recent cases, the parent tried to inform the school and tried to say something's up. You need to check on my kid. So what's the answer?
It's so like multifaceted and so woven.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard.
I feel like,
I mean, it sucks that it's happening at all. Bottom line, but.
Yeah, because my husband and I were just talking about it this morning, actually, because I was mentioning Silence of the Lambs, and he goes, I hated that movie.
Yeah.
He goes, that movie was so deeply disturbing to me. He goes, I'd rather just watch my outer space movies that are entertaining than see something like that. He goes, and I can't help but think it influences someone who may be
it might trigger something.
And I'm like, I always thought the violent video games were bad, and especially when Columbine happened and the fact those guys had played all those shooter games, and I was like, these games are bad. And supposedly studies, and again, you have to look at who's funding studies and how reliable are the studies, say that that's not the case, which is probably also not the case with media.
Yeah.
But I do think it's media, it's mental health.
Mental health for sure.
It's, there's kids in our school buildings that 50 years ago would not have been in our buildings, because they would have been in a
facility
or someplace that would have been more tailored to.
But
to
what's
their
wild
needs.
is also 50 years ago, kids had even more access then to guns and to weapons, because it was just, we're on a farm or we're hunting. So it's just out in the, I remember we had a teacher, Mr. Olson.
Oh, I loved him.
Thank
I used
you.
to be like, what are you doing in your room? Your kids
He's
are
the
like
man.
so into it.
He was the man.
And he would just be talking. And I'm like, I don't know enough to talk that long.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
And he knew it. He just impressed the hell of us.
So
Well, he could just
incredible.
quote Shakespeare out of thin air.
He was genius.
And he would, he would only wear a suit to school on Shakespeare's birthday. That was the only time he would ever wear a suit to school. So
He was legendary.
He was a legend.
I taught with him.
But he had told us he had very vivid memory, and he was a New Milford stan. He grew up in here his entire life. And he would say, when I was 8 years old, it was not unheard of for me to walk down Main Street and Bank Street with a rifle over my shoulder, because we were out shooting squirrels, and that's how we fed our family. And so,
I have to tell you this story. This is
Oh,
killer. So growing up in Southbury, my family's been there forever. Same like Mr. Olson, like with those kinds of memories. When my dad was in 8th grade, his best friend was Buddy Bennett. There was this rash of break-ins at the Consolidated School, which was the old Rochambeau. It was a K-8 school. They were in 8th grade, and we didn't have a police department in Southbury. So this would have been like 1950s, 53, 54, because he graduated high school like 58.
Okay.
They were in 8th grade. They hired them to patrol the school.
The 8th graders.
All night long. There were like 4 8th graders
I love it.
with guns.
Yeah.
To protect the school. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Dad, you're really lucky you guys didn't shoot each other. And he
Right.
goes, we had code words. He goes, rabbit, rabbit was one of them. He goes, I still remember, like, we patrolled the
my
halls. We were
God.
up all night.
Yeah.
He goes, we were there for like a week. And
Yeah.
then whoever it was that was doing the vandalism and whatever just
Yeah.
stopped. They knew we were there and they stopped.
That's wild.
And I'm like, can you imagine?
But again, that's what's so interesting to me is how have we changed so much as a society, and why,
know.
and what exactly has driven those differences and those changes. Like, I talked about on the very first episode of this podcast when Joe and I were talking about Jason David Frank, I had thrown out the statistic that if there is a gun in the household, you're 70% more likely to commit suicide because it's right there, because you have that access.
Yeah.
But again, as I stated, back in the 50s and, when our parents were growing up, when our grandparents were growing up, they had access.
Right.
So what has changed so drastically? it's very interesting. And we can go on and on.
I think, and this, like when you look at, I feel like in the years that I taught, that students are a lot less happy. They're not as carefree. They're not.
There wasn't the same kind of pressure then.
I guess.
Now I feel like, my mom says the biggest problem that we have in this world, and this is everywhere, it doesn't matter where you are, is there are too many options. There are too many choices. So no matter what we do, we're going to get anxiety because we could make the wrong choice, or maybe what I need is not available. So so now I have to shop elsewhere. There are all these, whereas back then your choice was go to school.
That's my phone.
Oh, that's okay.
Nobody ever calls me.
That's okay.
I'm shocked.
So your choice is go to school, then go to work, start a family, have a home.
Right.
Those were your choices. Maybe enlist in the military. Those were that was it.
Yep.
Now it's, I have a choice of schools. I have a choice of where I live. I have a choice of colleges. I have a choice of whether or not I want to go to college. I have a choice of all these different jobs. I have a choice of my friends. I can be friends with somebody across the country. I can be friends with somebody in a completely different country. And then everything else that comes with it. And then we're pressured and we feel we need to keep up with the rest of the world and the people around us. And we're constantly being told we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we're not buying enough, we don't have enough money, but we also can't afford anything. So you know what I'm saying? Like,
you're right though. It paralyzes you.
It does. And again, nobody will recognize the mental health, the emotional health until you get to a mature level on your own. If your parents don't see it, or if your parents refuse to acknowledge it, and sadly there are still a lot of parents out there that don't believe in mental health care, or there's nothing wrong with my kid, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, the majority of us don't get better until we're on our own, and we have to face it head on. And either we choose to try to address it and correct it and make things better for ourselves, or we don't, and we just live in misery. So I know that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But but again, I think it's just, well, I can't say that it's so overwhelming that we can't solve it, because it feels as though we're the only country that has this issue. And statistically, that's pretty true. So somebody else has figured it out. But, and again, I'm not looking to you for the answer. I know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's just, I think people need to be a little more thoughtful about it, rather than just, again, using the school as a baby. Well, now they're having the drills, so hopefully it doesn't happen there. Or, it's first we blame the school, then we blame the parent, but you have to blame we have to blame society as a whole. We have to point the finger elsewhere, and we also have to look in the mirror.
Our neighbor has a exchange student right now from Germany, and she's at the high school, and Pomperog had a lockdown. They had a bomb scare recently. Oof. And the kid was freaked.
Of course.
She had never been through a drill.
Never had to worry about it. Yeah.
She was like, what? She was terrified.
Sure, of course. Well, and sadly, that's the reputation we've got here in America, is that we're all fat and we all carry guns. I mean, it's just, But let's move on to something more positive. Gang.
Okay.
So you are also the lead singer in a band, One Track Mind. You guys look them up on socials. How long have you've been with the band for quite some time?
Yeah, well, I always sang, even as a kid. And then I did theater. I did a cappella singing when I was in college.
Yeah.
I did a lot of musical theater, Brookfield. My face is still hanging there over the toilet. I was Cinderella.
That's awesome.
So I love music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of me. And then when my first marriage broke up, this guy had saved my phone number. He lived in Bridgewater and happened to call me. And he's like, I'm trying to put a band together. I remember you sang with me once.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I could use this in my life right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started singing with them. And so that was back when I was teaching at Schaghticoke.
Yeah.
Because I started teaching at Schaghticoke when I was 29.
That's awesome. So the late 90s.
Yeah.
Late 90s.
94.
Okay.
Yep, 94. Okay. And then, 94. So I ended up singing with him, and then I met my new husband because he's a guitar player. So we've always had a band, except for when we had my daughter. But even when I was pregnant with Katie, we used to still play in the basement, and I would just put a pillow around my stomach so that the doctor told me to. He's like, just protect her ears because she would really start moving around.
Oh, that's wild.
Like when she was
I
was pregnant. So it's really fun. It's a really cool thing.
And you have no stage fright at all? Because, like, that's what fascinates me.
Oh, of course I do.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what because I feel like you have got to have brass balls to go up on stage, let alone to sing. But, even just just performing in general, you've got to have brass balls. Like, I'm so impressed by anybody who's able to do that. Because no, ma'am, no, sir, I cannot. I can get on stage and I can just talk your ear off all day. That's fine. Because I'm just a rambling idiot.
Not at all.
For now.
You're amazing.
Ask my mother. But
I wouldn't be able to get up and talk. And even with teaching, I was always like, what can I give the students to do? So I don't have to say too much.
You were very good about open discussion. Yeah.
They want them to wrestle with it. I'm not giving my opinion on anything. But anyway, with band, because I'm working with a group of people that I really love and trust. And I've always had that, I mean, we've had some itinerations, especially with COVID, we kind of lost players and it was like hard to put things back together, but we have. And right now we have such a cool group of people that we're playing with that I always feel like they've got my back.
Yeah.
But I am always nervous. And I'm always once I get through 2 or 3 songs, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Usually even the middle of the first song, I'm fine. There's always this feeling like, what if my voice doesn't come out? You know what I mean? Or what if I go to sing and there's nothing there?
Yeah.
And all these people are waiting for it.
Yeah.
That's a bad feeling.
Yeah. My whole thing is sour notes. That's I'm terrified of hitting a sour note. So I'm just not going to sing in front of other people.
Yeah. And you know what?
That's for me in my car.
Yeah. It's funny too, because when I was younger and I started singing in a band, I was much better at hearing myself. And now that I've gotten older, I'm sure my hearing's going a little bit from all the singing in loud places.
Sure.
And if I sometimes feel like I can't hear myself, and the guys will be like, "You're deafening." And I'm like, I don't know. I'm having trouble hearing myself.
Yeah.
But when you use in-ears, you disconnect from what's happening around you and the audience. And so I've tried one in-ear, but then I read about it and it said that's the worst thing you can do for your hearing.
You're off balance.
And you'll keep turning it up until, and that's not good either.
Yeah.
So I prefer a monitor, old-fashioned way.
Sure.
And I prefer the instrumentation to not be too loud.
Okay.
I definitely feel like vocals need to be on top of everything.
I agree.
I
agree.
And you have to get people that will work together. It must have been like the Beatles always said that. The Beatles always said we were friends and we had each other and we felt so bad for Elvis because he was by himself.
Yeah.
And to be one of those single star people.
Yeah. It's lonely.
It's got to be so
it's lonely.
And hard.
Yeah.
And the pressure.
Yeah.
It's got to be huge.
Well, and seeing Elvis's story, again, who knows exactly how accurate everything is, but the fact that it broke my heart to realize that he went to Germany and that was just because he was in the military.
Right.
But the fact that he was never able to tour like he wanted to tour, he was never able to go to other countries, that really breaks my heart for him. So all of that is just so fascinating to me. And, do you think you're going to be in the band forever? Are you guys going to be playing until...
Okay, so that's another thing.
Yeah,
right
when do you
now,
stop?
My husband's 71. Our bass player is 71. Then coming down the line, our other guitarist is 63. Our drummer is 60. I'm turning 60 next year.
I mean, the Stones are still going.
Yeah.
I
love the Stones so much.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I feel like it's keeping us young. And I feel like the crowd that comes, the audience that comes to see us is older.
Yeah.
And especially because now that there's all these pubs and they're doing earlier gigs, you know what I mean? Like you go to New Asylum in Newtown and you're playing 3 to 6.
Yeah.
We're like, this is a perfect gig for us. By 7 o'clock we're home and we're, loaded in. And, yeah.
That's awesome.
So.
Well, I hope you keep going as long as you want to. That's really great. I love it.
Thanks.
So gang, get on socials, follow One Track Mind, check out, they've got videos, they have all the postings from where they're going to be around the state. It's never worked out for me. I'm always working whenever they're around. I think I got to see you live like once.
Wow.
But I do keep
Yeah, your mom
checking.
I haven't seen your mom in a while.
Mom is running around. She loves live music. Even we went out to Ireland, and like that's still like her biggest regret is we never got a chance to like go listen to any live music when we were over in Ireland. Like that's her thing. So she'll get back to you eventually. She's at any place she can go, she goes.
Playing for people like your mom, because there's people that when you're playing, they are really listening.
Yeah.
They're engaged with what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm a singer that doesn't use an iPad or anything. I memorize everything, and I'm looking at the crowd, and I'm trying to engage with the crowd.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, it's honestly, music is our whole lives growing up. That's all we did. We didn't go on vacation. We went to concerts. That's where all of our money went. We never went on vacations. We went to concerts.
I love that.
Yeah. So I've always told people, I said, I personally have seen probably over 200 artists in concert.
Yeah.
And my mom probably was at 150 of those.
Yep.
You know, and to this day, she and I still go and see shows together and, you know, compare notes and you know, I read about this person in Rolling Stone. What are they doing lately? Have I heard anything?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So she's in it. She loves it. But again, she has that appreciation because it's kind of something she's always wanted to do. She's in a folk trio now called Prism. But if she could ever get a chance to rock out with a band, she'll take it. She loves that stuff. So so she absolutely appreciates and gets it, you know. And she loves it. So she does. She goes and she dances right in front of the stage and she's singing along and she's bopping and having a good time. So yeah. Yeah.
When I sing with a band, it's like, because I've done acoustic stuff too.
Yeah.
And acoustic is nice.
Yeah.
And you can really hear yourself like crystal clear, which is a plus. But to be able to really blast and sing, it's so cathartic. And it's such a great energy rush and feeling.
Yeah.
We're practicing tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, gang, this is where we're going to stop.
This went so
we're
fast.
At time. I know. This is what I keep hearing from people. They're like, that was an hour? And
wow.
Believe me, producer Mike, well, you went over again. So I try to keep it tight. So, but this was my former 6th grade English teacher, Ellie. Thank you so much for joining me. We covered a lot of things. I hope it gave you guys things to think about, especially if you're a parent with a student in the school system these days, you guys. Seriously. But this was Try Not to Curse. And again, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
I am honored, Liz. Thank you.
We will catch you next time.